there's this like scarcity mindset that comes to filmmaking, especially when you're in a smaller city that is not necessarily a film hub, right? And so there are a lot of people who don't want to bring other people into the industry because you're going to have to compete with those people for jobs. And I try to tell everyone there's always space. A big part of what pushes my work is that I want to be on set and I want to see people who look like me, who come from different backgrounds.
Hello, my name is Jasmine, and I'm here with another episode. Today, I'm going to be talking with Maria Moreno. She is currently working as a freelance producer and assistant director on projects for clients such as Time. She also works at a nonprofit called Outside the Frame as a film career manager and manages the Oregon Media Production Assistant Training Program in collaboration with the Oregon Film Office. So, Maria, it seems like you do a lot just based off that little bio. So I'm curious to hear more about you, like where you're from, the work that you do, and how that all came to be.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Venezuela. I was born there, came to the US when I was 5 years old, and then spent most of my childhood and some of my adult life in Miami, Florida. That's where I started really getting involved with film and theater. I got a degree in theater while I was there. And then I moved here to Portland to go to Portland State University to get a film degree. And that's where I really started just like diving into the film world more robustly. And so now, 5, 6 years down the line, I'm working basically full-time as a producer, doing less assistant directing now, and then also working full-time as the film workforce development manager at the nonprofit Outside the Frame, which mainly works with houseless and marginalized young adults. And so my whole job there is getting them plugged into the film industry, making sure that they have the connections that they need to start their careers. So it's been a really interesting journey from like where I started to where I'm at now.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting to hear too that you have a theater background. Tell me
Yeah.
more about that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I started doing theater in high school. It was just a place that I felt really like comfortable and safe. And I was really fascinated by it. Like I was always really into movies. But it was really interesting to me to see how theater productions worked. And so in high school, I started getting involved in the behind the scenes parts of theater. So I did a lot of stage managing, house managing, things like that. And then I just kept doing that when I went to college. And it was really great. I think my background in theater, specifically the stuff that I did when I was stage managing, gave me a really solid foundation for when I started to do assistant directing and producing, because I was basically just dealing with the logistics of a stage production, and I was able to just transfer those skills into dealing with the logistics of a film production.
Yeah. And when you like made that shift into the film world, did you already have an idea of like those roles that you wanted to take on, or did it just come naturally to you?
I mean, I think that a lot of people go into film really wanting to pursue directing or writing. I definitely came from it uh, from that perspective. But then I started getting hired for assistant director jobs, and I realized that the planning of the production can be just as exciting as like creating the script or directing the actors. And so I got really interested in how to like put the puzzle pieces together to make a film come to life. And it just felt like it came really naturally with the skills that I had. And so I just kept pursuing that. And I think that now, even though I do still write my own things on my own time and I direct things on my own time, I'm really passionate about just keeping producing, especially now that I'm producing films and music videos for folks that are marginalized, right? Like, it feels like the right place for me to be.
Yeah. That's honestly so good to hear you say that you have like this excitement about planning as well. Because I think, with film, we think a lot about like the artistic side and the technical side with like how to use gear. But when it comes to like producing, that planning aspect often gets like overlooked.
Yeah.
So it's cool to hear that you actually enjoy that and that's something that you're good at.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of other people who do producing, assistant directing, and I find that a lot of us have that same sort of passion for just I keep calling it like putting the puzzle pieces together, but I really think that that's it because it almost feels like a game at some points where I'm thinking, okay, I've got this location, I've got this actor, I need to make it work within this time frame. And it's like a puzzle and you're putting it together, and then when you finally figure it out and you see the picture, it's really incredible, and you step back and you think, wow, I did that with this team of people, obviously, but it can feel incredibly fulfilling to go from just a bunch of pieces to a really finely tuned finished product.
I feel like that's such a good way to put it as like film and video as a project as a whole because there's so many different moving parts and producing in itself is so many moving parts. So all of the puzzle pieces coming together, I think that's such a great way to name that process. But going back to like the team aspect of filmmaking and video making, how do you find this scene here in Portland to be as a community of media makers?
I think it's my favorite artistic community. I think that when I first got here, I was really nervous that I wasn't going to find people that shared my lived experience, that, would meld in with the creative process that I have. You know what I mean? And I think that once I got plugged into the community, I realized that there were so many people who are just so open and collaborative. I think that I feel really jealous or not, I feel really thankful to be in
Mhm.
Portland, and I feel bad for people who are in other cities
Yeah.
because we just have like a really special community that I don't think you can find anywhere else.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just feel really grateful to be plugged into this community.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just based off like the people that I know, like knowing you and other folks here that do the work, it's really encouraging to see how many people thrive in this area, especially considering that, when people think of film, it's often like LA or New York, these big cities where you have to hustle. But here, there's a lot of really good work going on. But to kind of go back to like the city aspect of it, was there something specific that brought you to Portland? Like, what was it about the city that intrigued you?
So I actually just came to Portland because my half sister at the time was living in Corvallis, and we didn't really grow up together, and so I really wanted to reconnect with her. Um, and I had wanted to move out of Miami anyways. The creative environment there is just not as collaborative. It can be very cliquey. And I thought that Portland felt like a cool place to kind of explore. I had never lived anywhere outside of Venezuela and Miami. And so I don't know, I was interested. And then when I came here and started meeting people, it felt really right to be here. And so I haven't left since then.
That's so good to hear. I feel like it's always interesting to me to hear about what brings people to this part of the world because so many people just like find that, like what you were saying, like that community to be really inspiring and really grounding. And as someone that like I've grown up here pretty much my whole life, it's just really heartwarming to know that this is like the place to be for sure. Um, and going back to a little bit more about like what all of the roles that you take on. So you talked a little bit about like what you do as a producer, and I was hoping to hear more about the work that you do with Outside the Frame. Like, how did your journey begin there?
So I got connected with Outside the Frame in 2019. I actually got connected with them because I was a part of an intensive that they did. And intensives are just these 3-week long workshops that they do that are basically just you're spending all 3 weeks really deep in the creative process. And so you start out by doing ideation, and then you spend a week doing pre-production and a week doing the actual production. And that intensive specifically was for queer Latina people. The project itself was to make short telenovela style pieces that were meant to help kids who were growing up in like rural parts of Oregon. So like, for example, the project that I pitched to them that we actually did end up working on was a project about how at the time I had just moved to Portland. I was going to university. I was basically working like 5 jobs, had scholarships, had grants, had loans, and I still was really like struggling financially. And I had a lot of trouble finding where to go to get that sort of support. And so I made a piece about that and we produced it. And after that, I thought that the environment there was so welcoming and encouraging of the creative process that I just stuck around. Neely Yosha, who was the executive director there, she kept hiring me to produce short videos that they were doing there. I directed a couple of things. And then just last year, I got hired on to essentially run the workforce development program that we have over there, which is really exciting because I think that for a very long time, we had a lot of really cool pieces in place at that nonprofit, but we didn't really have anyone that was dedicated to getting folks into the film industry. And I really pushed for having someone who was there kind of like full-time working to get these people opportunities to be on set, to find mentors. And now I get to do that, and that's really exciting. I don't even have to look very far to see the fruits of my labor because, I mean, I see you, right? Someone who went through PA Pathways. I see folks who, when I met them, weren't really in a place where they could be doing film work, and now they're working full-time on set, getting connected to people that are helping them make their own films. And that's really fulfilling, especially because film can be such a grind. And so
Yeah.
when I'm able to see other people get really passionate about being in the film industry, it just fulfills me in a way that I don't think working on something like a commercial or a feature can fulfill me.
Yeah. That's so good to hear because I feel like the process that you're explaining to me about what you do with a career manager is similar to like what you had to go through. Like I feel like you went through this process of like trying to find resources and trying to get your foot in the door, and now you're kind of like on the other end of that helping other people, and it's sort of creating like this cycle of creators who are coming into this industry and like really planting their roots here. So it's really good to hear that you're at a point in your career where you are able to help others in that way.
Yeah, definitely. I tell people all the time that there's this like scarcity mindset that comes to filmmaking, especially when you're in a, smaller city that is not necessarily a film hub, right? And so there are a lot of people who don't want to bring other people into the industry because you're going to have to compete with those people for jobs. And I try to tell everyone there's always space. I don't believe in the scarcity mindset. I think that there's space for everyone. There's especially space for people who haven't gotten the chance to be there, right? And so a big part of what pushes my work is that I want to be on set and I want to see people who look like me, who have my lived experience, who come from different backgrounds. I don't want to be working with straight white men in their 40s, 50s who are never going to listen to me or understand me. I want to see other people. And it feels really good to be able to be in a job where I can actually make that happen because for a long time I just felt really frustrated with the system and I didn't know what to do about it. And now I feel like I can make a really tangible change and then encourage other people to do the same thing, So it's kind of like you open the door and then you keep the door open and you make sure that everyone else keeps the door open so more people can come in.
That's so beautifully put. And is your work that you do with the Oregon Film Office pretty similar to what you do with Outside the Frame, or are they two separate entities? Like, how do they work together?
So essentially, we outside the frame collaborate with the Oregon Film Office to run the Oregon Media PA Pathways program. Um, and so we're two separate entities, but we co-run this program that is essentially a production assistant training program where we take folks who are typically underrepresented. So we're working with BIPOC folks, LGBTQIA, folks that have experienced houselessness, immigrants, refugees. And they do a 1 day training. And then once they do that 1 day training, which I teach along with my colleague, Michaela Caldwell, who also works at Outside the Frame. Once they go through that training, then they're put on a list that essentially the Oregon Film Office sends out to any production that comes into town. And so a lot of the work that I do in collaboration with them is just kind of like shaping the program, placing folks onto film sets, just kind of like figuring out what opportunities we can give to the folks who have gone through that program. This past year, we got really far into developing more educational workshops for folks who have gone through the program. We started a pilot mentorship program where we're placing folks with mentors that can kind of guide them to the next step in their career. So it started out just like kind of a small program, and we've really built it up to be something larger and more exciting. And I really couldn't do that without the help of Tim Williams from the Oregon Film Office, because we work well with one another, and he's really encouraging of all the ideas that I have, and is really excited to provide funding to be able to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So it's really good to hear about all of like the different roles that you have, all the hats that you wear. But I'm curious to know, is there anything specific that you're most proud of out of the work that you do with any of your organizations or any personal projects or just any achievements that you feel like you want to highlight?
Um, I mean, I think while I'm on the train of PA pathways, I think that my proudest achievement is the fact that since I started teaching PA pathways about 5 years ago, we've trained, I think, about 60 or so people. And of those 60, I think about half of them have gone on to work in the industry, if not full time, at least part time. And that feels like a really crazy accomplishment. Anytime that I'm on a film set or a commercial set and I see someone who has gone through pathways who is now hired there, maybe not even as a production assistant, maybe they're hired as a production designer, or they've been hired as camera assistant. That is really exciting to me because it's just a really tangible way to see how the work that I'm doing is making an impact on the film sets that are going on in town.
Yeah, totally. And it really seems like you're building a strong sense of community through the work that you do. And like being able to see that on set and in action is really impressive. So congrats to you.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing. And on the flip side, I'm curious to hear about like some challenges that you've had throughout your career and, how you've managed to navigate some of these issues that have come up for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of my challenges come from the fact that you know, I'm a Latina immigrant. Like, I don't necessarily have the financial backing from my family to be able to do the same sort of things that other people who maybe come from more affluent backgrounds can do. That's always been a struggle. It's really hard to be in the film industry if you don't have some sort of financial backing in another form,
Totally.
right? Which is why I worked 5 jobs for so long, is because I didn't have anywhere else to get money from. And so I was just working constantly. Um, and I think that's been my biggest struggle. And also just, it's hard to get people to take you seriously. when you're doing this sort of work and you don't look like the people that they are expecting to be doing this sort of work. And that's also challenging. I think that I've had to really not beat myself up over opportunities that maybe don't come to fruition just because someone doesn't believe in me because of the way I look or what my background is. And that's been it's an ongoing challenge. But I can see the change happening. And so I think
Yeah.
maybe one day it won't be as challenging.
Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, on top of all of like the hard work you have to do as a filmmaker, like having all of these, like expectations and I guess like judgments being placed on you is definitely a challenge. But I I'm curious to know like what inspires you to keep going or what has inspired you to kind of like start this career.
Um, I really think that my biggest inspiration is my mom. She, ever since I was small, has really pushed me to pursue whatever um, inspires me. And that's something really special, especially coming from an immigrant household where a lot of the other people I know who come from immigrant households don't necessarily have that same sort of support, especially when you're going into the arts. But my mom was always really encouraging. She was always really supportive. She's my biggest cheerleader. Anytime I accomplish something, she's the first person I go to, and she's always really excited for me. And so I think that every time I go a step further, I feel like I'm doing it for her because I know that she sees the work that I'm doing and can see that the work that she did for me is paying off. And that there's something about that that is just so beautiful and really like pushes me to do better and better every day.
Totally. I totally feel you. I have like a similar experience. My parents are immigrants from Mexico, so I am lucky enough that I also had like the opportunity to be encouraged from them to like pursue this career. So I definitely agree that like when you do something for yourself, you're also doing it for them and your family and like sort of creating this legacy for yourself. So I think that's so well put. Um, Another question that I have for you is, do you have any passion projects in the works or what's coming up for you next?
Yeah, so I think that of my own personal projects, I'm currently working on a short script that I'm hoping to have done sometime soon and maybe shoot by the end of the year. Um, Otherwise, I'm really focused on my work at Outside the Frame, supporting my friends. Yeah, I think that truly the nonprofit work that I'm doing is what I'm most excited about right now. But I do hope to finish my short script
Yes,
sometime soon so that I can shoot it at the end of this year.
totally. Do you feel comfortable sharing like what it's about?
Yeah, it's kind of a sexual assault revenge script about someone who is holding a grudge for a very long time and finally getting revenge.
Oh my God.
I thought about what I wanted to see in film, and I was like,
Yeah.
that's what I want to see. I want to see more revenge films. And
Yes.
so
Oh
that's what
my
I'm
God.
working on.
I'm so excited. That sounds really great. I love feminine rage. Like
Same.
we need it more.
Hmm.
And my last question for you is how can people get in touch with you? Where can we see the work that you do online or anywhere else?
Yeah. The best place to find me is at my website, which is mariamorenofilm.com. And on there, I have all the links to my LinkedIn, Instagram, Vimeo. And then if anyone wants to reach out to me about stuff related to workforce development, so getting involved with Outside the Frame or PA Pathways, they can reach out to me at maria@otfpdx.org.
Awesome. And anything else that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you?
No, thank you for inviting me. I'm so
Yeah.
happy to be here with you. This is
Yay.
another big accomplishment for me is to be able to sit with you.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yay. Wait till you tell your mom.
I know.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Again, my name is Jasmine Vasquez Sierra with Producers Corner. This podcast is a part of MetroEast Community Media. Learn more at metroeast.org. And don't forget to follow us, give us a review, give us a like from wherever you're watching. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.